the interior of the Browns defensive line might be their most improved position group, but I think the edge of that defensive line is the Browns' best position group, at least for my money. It's definitely one of the best in the league, in my opinion, and of course that all starts with Myles Garrett, who is their biggest star on the defensive side of the ball, perhaps the biggest star on the team in general, and the best thing is that his play backs up his reputation. He has had 16 sacks in the past 2 seasons. Both of those are a franchise record for the Cleveland Browns. Last season, he also had 26 quarterback hits, 18 total tackles for loss, and 60 combined tackles. He was AP second-team All-Pro last season, along with 2 forced fumbles and 4 pass deflections. Myles Garrett can get involved in run defense. We've certainly seen him break up some runs in the backfield before, but that's not really what he's here for. Myles Garrett, what you want him to do is you want him to blow past tackles and get to the quarterback and hit them for a sack, although not too hard. Maybe tuck them into bed and to not get a roughing the passer penalty, but that's another conversation. He creates opportunities both for himself, obviously getting those 16 sacks every year and those pressures and those hits, and also for the other guys on the defensive line with him. I think that's why there is kind of a market to be the other guy opposite of Myles Garrett. The question is, for Myles Garrett, it's not whether or not he'll be elite, but it's just how elite will he be? Will he, become the defensive player of the year, or will he fall just short of that mark? He's been in that conversation for the past few seasons now. He obviously doesn't win it all the time, but he is constantly one of the best defensive players in the league. And now another addition to the team that makes this a little better. Za'Darius Smith acquired via trade with the Vikings for 2 fifth-round picks. The Browns also getting a 6th and 7th rounder in the deal. I think this move is to try to offset the loss of Jadeveon Clowney. Smith restructured his deal with the Browns so that he will hit free agency after the season, and I do feel like it does work a little bit for both sides. Obviously, for Za'Darius Smith, he gets more of his money up front, and he does get to hit free agency after the season ends. But for Cleveland, they are going to be redoing their cap situation pretty much every year going forward after this one. So to have that cap hit, even if it does increase, be completely off the books after this season, they can relook at things from there. I do think that also does help with the flexibility for the front office and for Andrew Berry to help put that Harvard degree to work and do whatever he has to do there. Last season with the Vikings, he had 10 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, 44 combined tackles, a forced fumble, and 5 pass deflections, and he also made the Pro Bowl. Now, those numbers do come with a little bit of a caveat, as his production did take a pretty big nosedive into the second half of the season, which is a little bit concerning, but hopefully having Myles Garrett on the other side of him will open things up, and so maybe he can, produce those numbers a little bit more consistently. Hopefully there's not a big dearth of him just not performing. And again, with how good Myles Garrett is, even if Za'Darius Smith does have a little bit of a dip in production, his play does go down a little bit. Myles Garrett is there on the opposite side to wreck shop if that doesn't work. Now with the Za'Darius Smith signing and the restructuring of his deal in the trade, it does kind of continue this front office's kind of mercenary for hire philosophy on who plays opposite of Myles Garrett in that 1-2 punch, the second punch in that 1-2 punch. Obviously, they did have Jadeveon Clowney on a couple of one-year deals. In hindsight, I am a little bit surprised they were able to get Clowney on that second deal. I guess no other team offered him more money than what the Browns were willing to pay him. So they got Clowney for the 2 years. Obviously, that second year ended up in smoke. Both of those years were kind of one-year deals where it felt like, they'll have him for a season and look, see how things go from there. And it does feel like the same thing is happening here with Za'Darius Smith. Another external addition this season for the Browns was Ogbonnia Okoronkwo. He signed a 3-year deal in free agency. He last played with the Houston Texans. He had 5 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, 9 tackles for loss, and 44 combined tackles. All of those are significant career highs due to the fact that last year was really the first season that he got a huge increase in his snap count. He also had 1 forced fumble and 2 pass deflections for what it's worth. Him as the default number 2, because that's what it originally was before the Za'Darius Smith trade. Him as the default number 2 to the opposite side of Myles Garrett probably would have been a downgrade from the best of what Jadeveon Clowney brought to the Browns, but I do feel like it still could have worked if that was what the ultimate plan was. However, with the trade for Za'Darius Smith, I feel like Ogbo is a ridiculously good bet as being the first guy off the bench on the edge, as the first guy in that rotation. I feel like that's a brilliant that's going to be great for the Browns. And even if you think that Ogbo isn't quite ready yet, he can take this year. He can take a little bit less snaps, be right behind, the first guy to come off the bench if Smith needs a break, or even if Myles Garrett needs one as well. I do feel like this is great for his long-term development. Then you have some returning faces for the Browns, starting with Alex Wright, who's entering his second season. Last year, he was a third-round pick out of UAB. He is kind of seen as a bit of a project that might take some time, but he did show some nice flashes last season when he got in. I feel like as of right now, he is a decent rotational piece with plenty of room to grow, so I'm excited to see that happen. They also have Isaiah Thomas entering his second season. He was a 7th-round pick out of Oklahoma last year. Browns drafted a lot of guys from Oklahoma in 2020 in the 2022 draft. I feel like right now he's in a similar place that Alex Wright is, kind of locked in that rotation. Probably not as much of a ceiling, maybe a bit less long-term upside, but I still feel like he was pretty useful in his minutes, although he can't get complacent because the Browns drafted Isaiah McGuire this draft, a 4th-round pick out of Missouri. In his last year with Missouri, he had 8.5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, and 40 total tackles, as well as 2 forced fumbles. So if he does well enough in camp and he impresses enough coaches in the preseason games and things like that, he could be a threat to a roster spot for a guy like Isaiah Thomas or maybe even Alex Wright if he impresses that much. And you can't really have too many good defensive ends, as is shown by the Browns still pursuing some other additions and undrafted free agents, starting with Sam Kamara. He's bounced around a couple of practice squads the last few seasons. Likely more of the same here, but I guess it's training camp. You might as well give some guys a look. And then there's Lonnie Phelps and Jeremiah Martin, both of them rookie undrafted free agents. Phelps from Kansas, Jeremiah Martin from Washington. Just like Sam Kamara, both of them are long shots to make this roster, but they do have a pretty good chance to showcase themselves, even if they don't crack the 53-man roster in Cleveland. There are also plenty of teams that are going to be looking at training camp tape and preseason tape and all of that, and I'm sure that there are definitely teams that will be keeping an eye out on some of the guys if they can't crack this huge roster with guys like Myles Garrett and Za'Darius Smith. Then other teams from around the league are going to be looking to try to snatch other people up that look good with the Browns in training camp, but the Browns just don't have room for them. So that's going to be it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you think the Browns defensive ends will look like this season, how they'll do, how they'll fare. I mean, any group that's headlined by Myles Garrett is probably going to be pretty good, but you can be the judge of that in the comments down below. Thank you for watching if you made it this far into it, and I will see you at the next one.